You know, a couple of years ago I didn't think that I would ever get to this point, so it's really cool, and I wanted to thank you guys so much for subscribing to the channel. I am a little humbled and overwhelmed by the fact that I've hit 2,000 subscribers. It's really cool. And so a couple weeks ago I posted a video basically asking you guys, I wanted to do a little something different, and instead of doing like a game room tour or like a certain sort of thing like that, I figured why not do a question and answer. So you guys asked a ton of questions, so I'm going to try to do these a little rapid fire because there are so many. So again, thanks for asking me questions, and again, thanks for subscribing. So some of these are ridiculous, some of these are actually serious questions, so here we go. So 1325 Marky writes, if you were stuck on a deserted island, what video game system would you want to have with you? Also, are there any movie-based games that you love? For movie-based games, if I were to recommend some that were not... It's the best way to put it. If I were to recommend some that aren't the typical ones that everybody picks, then I would probably say Aeon Flux. If you haven't played that, it's a PS2 game. It's dirt cheap. You can get it anywhere. It's also on the Xbox as well, but I don't believe it's backwards compatible. I could be wrong about that. So that you could play it on the Xbox 360. Not sure, but it is an Xbox original title as well. Aeon Flux is really cool. It's kind of like a hybrid between the movie and the animated series, and it's really cool. So I recommend checking that out. Also, the Wolverine Origins game is fantastic. It's the best Wolverine game ever made. And I'm trying to think. Also, X2 Wolverine's Revenge for Game Boy Advance is really good as well. So those are just a few that I would recommend, like right off the top of my head. As far as the other question, the deserted island question, I would probably say the NES, just because I'm the most familiar with its library, and also at the same time there's a lot of games that I've not sat down and played through that I've been really wanting to beat. And I think with the NES there's a certain level of challenge that isn't in later systems. Not that there's no challenge, but I kind of feel like the NES, because of the way that the games were developed and everything, games play differently on the NES than they do on later systems like the Super NES and the Genesis and all that. So I don't know, just my 2 cents. Chris Myers asks, you always sound very knowledgeable about music, and I was wondering what musical background you have. Do you play any instruments? I do, actually. I took drums for several years, both percussion in cadet and concert band, as well as marching band. And I self-taught myself the drum set, and just been playing off and on for years. I'm not like amazing, like don't get me wrong, I'm not like a huge crazy like amazing drummer or anything, but I could hold my own, and I enjoy it. It's fun to play the drums. But yeah, it's one of the things that I've always wanted to go back and buy a drum set, but got nowhere to put it in this house currently. But maybe in the future I'll get one, but who knows. The next question is from Retro Power Up. He asks, what's your YouTube setup like? Video gear, cameras, game capture hardware, audio gear, editing software, your workflow, etc. I'm always interested in seeing how other people make their videos. Well, hardware-wise, I use a Sony Handycam, which, believe it or not, it looks amazing with the right lighting. I use 2 sets of professional lighting equipment. I do have a third, but it is not currently, like the bulb broke. It's funny, when I got the set, my fiance got it for me, the bulb broke. Like I was putting everything together, dropped the bulb, broke. I was pissed, but I never replaced it. But I do have 3 sets of them for optimal lighting. 2 seems to get me by pretty good because I've got the natural lighting in the room as well, and as you guys could tell, it looks pretty good. For other equipment, I do use a green screen for certain situations that call for it. This season so far has been pretty green screen heavy for Dude You Haven't Played This Game, and you're going to see a lot more in the near future, so get ready to check that out. As far as editing equipment, I use Sony Vegas and Audacity for recording audio and for editing video for Sony Vegas. And I also use some other programs. I just recently checked out a program called OBS Studio, which I use to record arcade footage specifically, just because I don't have an arcade machine or a MAME cabinet or anything like that, or a dedicated computer for that. So I record it on my laptop, and I use OBS. OBS outputs into FLV format, so then I convert it to, using Handbrake, which I would recommend. Handbrake is a free program that allows you to convert to MP4 format. So if you guys are looking for something like that, it works really well so far from what I can tell. As far as microphone, I use a Blue Yeti, which I'll show you because I was using it to record something. I also use a pop filter on there as well, and I have a microphone stand. So that's what I use for emulation or equipment. I used to use Fraps for emulation to record gameplay footage. Hate it, it's awful. Now I use Elgato. I use an Elgato Capture HD device, which is really cool. It records HDMI, composite, and component. I also recently got a component adapter that allows me to record in component without losing any video quality. I haven't played with that thing too much lately. I did record some test footage with it and it seemed pretty cool. Unfortunately, it doesn't do progressive scan, which is a shame because I have the progressive scan cables for the GameCube. As far as why, not really sure. It might be my laptop. I do have an i3 processor on my laptop, not the greatest. I've been meaning to upgrade my laptop for quite some time. For the question about workflow, I'll keep it really simple. I think of ideas based on games that I play first. So I'll look at a game and I'll look up some information on it, and then what I'll do is, if I play the game, if anything comes to me, like a scene or anything that I think that I could do, like for skits, usually I work around the skits. Actually, that's how the show is developed. So I come up with some ideas in my head for skits. Sometimes they work, sometimes they don't, you guys know that. And then I put it all together. I record the gameplay footage first, write the script, then I do voiceover work where I record my voice, and then I film myself doing live action material, compile all that together in Sony Vegas, and edit it. So that is how my workflow goes. Cobalt Charger asks, bees? And I'm gonna answer with bees. Retro Shred asks, if you could resurrect one dead or long neglected game series, which would you choose? That is a tough one because my three favorite series, Castlevania, Mega Man, and Metroid, have all been fairly neglected over the past few years. I would probably say Castlevania, and no, not Lords of Shadow. I'm talking about old school regular Castlevania, just because it's my favorite game series of all time, so I would probably say Castlevania. For games that are like less popular or game franchises that haven't had games in years, I would probably say Perfect Dark. I think the Perfect Dark series deserves some retribution. Also Battletoads, that'd be really cool. Pretty much anything that Rare has done that is essentially a series, if you will. TG5455 asks, how's your manager? So he is doing well. I have been trying to see if we can get him on a phone conversation, but we both just, our schedules just aren't lining up, you know. So one of these days he'll show back up. I have a good feeling that he'll be back. So stay tuned for that. TG5455's other question is, are you going to do any console reviews in the future? That's a good question. You know, there's so many people that have done amazing console reviews. Gamester81 specifically does some amazing work on console reviews. So I kind of feel like, why? Like, what do I have to say about consoles? I mean, the facts are all there. There's so many reviewers that do so much better of a job when it comes to console spotlights. Gamester81, Rerez does some really amazing work. Norm the Game Historian does some really good stuff too with hardware. My Life in Gaming Guys, check them out. They are fantastic. My Life in Gaming. So all of those guys do some really amazing work when it comes to hardware. And so whenever I watch their stuff, I'm like, they pretty much said anything that I would say. So if I don't have anything personal to add, I generally don't do a review. That's why I haven't really... Okay, the cat just freaked out. You okay? Royalty. Vintage Video Game Geek asks, why are you so cool? Bees? Matt Pilkington asks, favorite Mega Man game, favorite Castlevania game. Ooh, he knows my taste. Favorite Castlevania game, definitely Castlevania 2. It kind of goes back and forth between Castlevania 2 Simon's Quest and Super Castlevania 4, but usually Castlevania 2 wins out on that. Mega Man 3 is my favorite Mega Man game of all time. My order of Mega Man games is all over the place, but it's generally stayed the top 3 are 3, 4, and 6. So yes, I know 4 and 6, that kind of surprises some people because a lot of people think that I'd say 2, but I think 2's overrated personally. I think it's a good game, but I kind of feel like it's overrated. The Old Man 2084 asks, does your fiance play games? Do you play together? That's a good question. We don't really play that many video games. In all honesty, she's not much of a gamer. She likes casual games like Candy Crush and like Sudoku type stuff. Peggle, she really loves Peggle, so she plays that quite a bit, or she used to at least. But yeah, mostly nowadays she's doing Candy Crush. She's also a big fan of like some of the mascot games like Sonic and stuff like that. So she enjoys those games. She's just really not a big gamer as much as I am, of course. But she enjoys it. We play Mario Kart from time to time, and that's always really fun when we get a group of friends together. We'll play Mario Kart 8 or we'll play Wii Bowling, and usually we have fun doing that. So one time she beat me in Smash Brothers, but it was like one of those things where we were all playing and she beat me and she was like, oh, I beat you in Smash Brothers, and she won't let me live it down. So it's always fun to get razzed by her. Alright, so Son of the Devil asks, I really enjoy your show, but I wanted to ask, where did the name come up for the title, Dude, You Haven't Played This Game? Most of the games you cover are relatively obscure, so why the assumption most people should have already played them? I have a hunch it's most likely tongue-in-cheek. Yes and no. I mean, the whole point of the title was to get people intrigued to play these games. So it's like, oh dude, you haven't played this game? You really need to. Here's why. And that's kind of the whole way as to why it got started. Now, regarding the series and like inspirations and stuff like that for where the name actually technically came from, I have a lot of inspirations from various different reviewers. I have a journalism degree, so I've been doing video game journalism for quite some time, since high school. So when I graduated and I got a job, I couldn't do gaming. Like, I wasn't out west, I didn't live in New York, I didn't live in California, and there's not a lot of places that you can go for video game journalism, so I essentially just worked online on various different websites and did freelance work. One of the reasons why I started this show and the channel is because I was a big fan of AVGN, Angry Video Game Nerd, and Happy Video Game Nerd, who's now going by Derek Alexander. Derek Alexander did at MagFest, he did like a kind of like a, not tutorial, but like kind of like a question and answer panel about how he does his videos. And after going to that, I was like, I can do this. I was like, I've got the chops, I've got the reviewing skills. I was like, I can do this. And so I sat down and I said, yeah, I'm gonna do it, and put out the first episode, and it was awful. And so it's just gotten better and better as time goes on. And for those of you who were there from the very beginning, you are troopers, because you've seen the show grow and change. Some of my other influences on the channel, I really quite enjoy Clan of the Grey Wolf, who's also known as Rue. He does some amazing videos. In fact, his videos are so good, they're intimidating to the point where I don't want to review the games if he's done them because he does such an amazing job on them. Pat the NES Punk, he does some really top-notch reviews as well, but the actual name itself, long story short, came from Hey Ash, What You Playin'? That's a skit show with, I can't remember their names, but it's this brother and sister team, and they're really funny. They do some pretty funny stuff. And so I thought, I can combine that with reviewing and do something kind of like a happy medium between HVGN and Clan of the Grey Wolf and, Pat the NES Punk, like that style. And so here I am today. So that is the story. Boss Rush Mode asks, what pre-CD format gaming system do you feel has the best video game music sound? I always enjoy hearing tunes, especially ones I'm not immediately familiar with, and within the first few notes think, this sounds like a Genesis game, or Super Nintendo, or Commodore 64, or TurboGrafx 16, etc., etc. So yeah, no, I would say that the NES has the most distinct sound for me. Going back, even growing up with the system, I could listen to something and be like, that's an NES game. Like that I know is an NES game. Commodore 64 has its own special sound as well, particularly because there's very heavy arpeggios used in those songs, so that's a pretty good one too. Danny Vision asks, you listen to a lot of video game soundtracks, but do you also listen to soundtracks from cartoons, TV shows, and movies? Honestly, no, not so much. Video game music is pretty much my passion, and when I'm not listening to that, I'm listening to anything between heavy metal, various different types of heavy metal, doom metal, black metal, extreme metal, power metal, progressive metal, speed metal, thrash metal, you name it. I'm a pretty big metal guy. I also really like electronic music, synth pop, jazz fusion, classical. I listen to a lot of different stuff. Classic rock, progressive rock. So, if you name a genre, I probably am into it. The only genres I'm definitely not into are like hardcore non-90s gangster rap, like modern day rap. I just can't get into that stuff. I'm also not really that big of a fan of dubstep. I like some of it, but not all of it. Country I hate. Can't stand country music. But yeah, as far as other soundtracks go, not so much. There's some cartoon soundtracks that I really like for like the theme songs, but that's about it. So Retro Island Gaming asks, what's your favorite thing about having a gaming channel, and what's the secret to a good collaboration video? That's a good question. The thing about collaboration videos is if you do too many of them too frequently, you get too burned out because it's a lot of work. When I was working on the Haunting Ground episode, which was last season's finale, that was a tough episode to put together because I had a deadline. It had to be out on Halloween, no later than Halloween. And, I was waiting on footage from other people, and I was, collaborating my footage, and I was doing reshoots, and some of the scenes didn't look good, and, all the props and the makeup and, the outfits and all that stuff. It takes time, it really does. And I was still playing the game almost up until the last week of recording. So, I've had to change the script based on the gameplay. And that was not a short game, that was like a 15-hour experience to play through. So that stuff can get kind of numbing when you're doing it. So I try to keep collaborations spread out. I try to only do like maybe tops like 2 to 3 a season, if that. If I do collaborations, it's usually like just I get my friends to help out with videos, and so you'll definitely see some collaborations this year with other gaming channels. But it's as far as what makes a good collaboration, just having a really strong, solid script, and working together. When Matt, Ezra, and I worked on the episode that we did for Spider-Man X-Men for my show, that was a combined effort. So I wrote most of the script, and then I passed it off to Matt, and Matt added his kind of flares to it and his own words and everything. So that's kind of how I like the collaborations to go is I do stuff, you do stuff. Is it good to control everything? Yes and no, because if the other person, if you write the script and you don't let anybody else touch it, it's not so great, because then you don't really get their perspective on it. So I always try to hand it off and say, hey, I want to find out what you have to say about that. As far as the first part about it, what's your favorite thing about having a gaming channel? I just think having a voice. It's really nice to have a voice and to have something to say and to have people there that want to watch you and want to relish in what you say and kind of add their own thing. So it's nice to bounce stuff back and forth between commenters and viewers and fans and be like, oh, you played that game too? Oh yeah, that game's amazing. Like, that's kind of what I live for, is that dialogue back and forth between fans. So I appreciate you guys for leaving so many questions and comments and everything. Craigslist Game Finds asks, what would be your favorite handheld? For games, I would say the original Game Boy, and also the Game Boy Color. For actual physical hardware handheld, probably the 3DS. The 3DS is phenomenal. It's a really good system. They've done such a great job with it. And I said from day one that it was a good system. Gnarkill 420 writes, if you could only listen to one OST for the rest of the year, what would it be? Not limited to games that came out this year. I don't think I could answer that. I don't know. There's just too many great soundtracks out there. I would probably say Troubleshooter 2, also known as Battlemania Daiginjo, which came out only in Japan. It's a Genesis game. And I really love that soundtrack. I've been listening to that quite a bit. That or anything by Iku Mizutani. Alright, Micah Buzan, or Buzan, I'm sorry, I can never pronounce your last name. I think it's Buzan. Writes, film, comics, rock music, and even fiction novels have been blamed for corrupting the youth and have been considered lower forms of entertainment when they first become popular. It seems that every new art form is met with criticism and suspicion. Being a relatively young form of entertainment, video games are no different. Video games require artists of all kinds to create them, from character designers to musicians. Do you think video games will reach a point where they are considered legitimate works of art just as film and fiction novels are by the general public? Regarding video games, gaming is so interactive, it requires participation. Like, you need to have a participant playing, and the way that I play a game is completely different the way that other people play the games. So as far as will it ever truly be an art form, I don't know. Part of that kind of goes against how I feel about video games, because when I think art form, I don't necessarily think video games. I wish that video games would get more respect for the medium that they are, instead of just being like kids' toys, which a lot of people, some people, especially older people, still think. But I think that if you've got a medium that's been around since the 70s, you're probably not going to see it evolve into something that's respectable from other that everyone is into until probably well into at least 2030, I would say. That's probably a good chunk of time for people to recognize gaming as an art form. But I don't know, it's not really my thing. Games should be games to me. They shouldn't play like movies. I like LA Noire. That's not a game to me. That's just an interactive movie. Buried on Mars asks, are you glad you didn't grow up playing Atari? If you did, we'd have to call you Mike Atari. Yeah, I am. I just sold all my Atari stuff recently. And the reason I sold it is because I never played it. And I figured, I can use the money elsewhere in my collection. And also on top of that, I want to give it a good home to somebody that actually will make use of it. So I sold my Atari and some of my games for it, or actually pretty much all my games. Yeah, I played Atari like when I was a kid, but I played Nintendo first, and then, I had a neighbor kid who had an Atari, and he was like, oh, you should come over and check out Atari. And I'm like, don't you have Nintendo? Like, why would you play Atari? So that's kind of my mindset, is Nintendo's always been better than Atari, so to speak. YouTube commenter, which, okay. Where do you see yourself in 5 years, and what makes the Super Nintendo such a great system? The Super Nintendo I was really hyped for when it came out, and I was in 3rd grade when I got my Super Nintendo, if I recall. and it's just such a phenomenal system. It really is. I think one of the things that makes it really fantastic is it can do so much, and it's so high tech. It's like one of the highest techs. It's one of the highest tech systems that Nintendo ever put out. I mean, if you look at all their other systems, aside from probably the GameCube, which had the best graphics, or probably like was first or second when it came to graphics, it went back and forth between the Xbox and the GameCube. But the Super Nintendo was like, if you wanted amazing graphics, you went there. If you wanted like unbelievable soundtracks, you went there. Not that the Genesis is bad. Again, I'm not saying the Genesis is bad. It's just, for me, the Super Nintendo was like the be-all, end-all of consoles. So that's why it's so awesome. As far as the first question, where do you see yourself in 5 years? Well, it depends what you're talking about. As far as YouTube goes, I don't know. I'm hoping that in 5 years I have 5,000 subscribers, but I also know that, I'm getting married this year. I'm probably gonna have kids in the future. So I know my time will be limited. So I do see myself putting out less content. So eat it up while you can. But I kind of feel like in 5 years I'll be a father, and I feel like in 5 years I will maybe have a better, a different position in my job and everything, and maybe in YouTube, as far as YouTube goes, I will have risen to slightly more importancy. I'm pretty much ranging about 1,000 subscribers a year now, which is cool, but the first 3 years of YouTube, it was pretty desolate, so it took a lot to get me to this point. So again, I gotta thank you guys for watching and contributing. Pimpalicious 1987 asks, does Zelda like any other games or just ChuChu Rocket? Well, I actually asked Zelda this question earlier, so I'm gonna go ahead and let her answer.
ChuChu Rocket's my favorite, but I do love my shiny objects. So I play Sonic for its rings, and Spyro for its gems.
And there you have it. Captain Carnage, or Carnage, asks, why is it whenever I take ice cubes out of the freezer they melt in my hands? Do I have melting powers? Yes, you do. Brazzle the Gamer asks, what was your favorite video to record and edit? Well, that's tough. Bad Dudes was a lot of fun to put together. The reason is I like having my friends here to help me with videos because we have fun. We have a lot of fun, and one of the things about the Bad Dudes review that was really cool is we were able to bounce ideas off of each other, and I was able to change the script on the fly. Like, okay, you do that and you do this. So Scott and Ed were part of that video, and they made it super special because I think all the little flares that I had ideas for, they kind of ran with, and they were both like, oh well, I could do this, or I could do that, or whatever. So I usually have an idea as to what I want to happen in when I do the live action footage, and the Bad Dudes footage wasn't hard to dissect. It was actually a really easy review to put together. So if you haven't checked that one out, definitely watch the Bad Dudes review from last season. That was quite a bit of fun to put together, and it was hilarious. It was a lot of fun. Any review with Brian as well. Brian plays Dracula, and the Undercover Cops review, both him and Ed were in that as well. So that was another really fun one from the previous season, was Undercover Cops. So those are just a few of the episodes that I really enjoy doing. Is really anything with my friends where we can all joke around and come up with really cool ideas. Pimpalicious also asks, what other hobbies do you have outside of gaming? Favorite current gen game so far, and worst game you've played? So worst game I've played, meaning like ever? Worst game I've played ever? Darkman for the NES. That game is so bad, just off the top of my head. Because it's not one of those things where you can learn a system and be like, okay, so if I figure out, if I do this and I do that, it's really wonky and quirky, but it works. That's not how Darkman works at all. It's a terrible game, don't play it, it's really awful. For favorite current gen game so far, I gotta say Shovel Knight probably. I know it's retro, I know it's old school, but Shovel Knight's really good. that's just off the top of my head. That's one of those games that I think of quite a bit. For something a little bit more modern, Saints Row 4, which came out on the PS3 and the Xbox 360, but it also got re-released on the PS4 and the Xbox One. I cannot stop playing that game. Love that game. So that's a really fun game, Saints Row 4. For what other hobbies do you have outside? I mean, I like sports to a point. I root for certain teams for baseball and football and basketball and whatnot, but I'm not like super into it where I know stats and all that garbage. Other hobbies, gaming is really my biggest hobby. I like movies, I like music as well. I used to be really big into comics, but I've gotten out of it. It's just not as important to me as it used to be. I still have a lot of my comics though, but yeah, that's definitely not something that I work on as much as far as reading comics. I like reading as well. I generally prefer reading nonfiction, and also comedy. Comedy books are usually pretty funny. I'm currently working through like maybe 4 or 5 books right now, and I don't get a whole lot of time to read them. It's like one of the last things I'd ever do is like read a book, but I do enjoy it from time to time. I used to write poetry and short stories and fiction, but I don't do that as much because now I do this channel and the show, so that's about it. Electro Mastro writes, what are games that you like that people might not know you like because you've never mentioned them in videos before? That's tough. So the reason I say that's tough is because there's a lot of games that I would love to talk about, but I can't because they're future reviews and I try to keep my reviews really secret. Yeah, I'm just thinking. I really like the Super Ghouls and Ghosts series, and I don't mention it all that often, but I like the level of challenge that the game provides. I just really wish that those Ghouls and Ghosts games that you didn't have to beat them twice to get the real ending, because they are very long and very difficult games. But yeah, those are some games. I really don't want to spoil too much. This season of Dude, You Haven't Played This Game, I plan on reviewing a lot of games that I've wanted to talk about in the past, but haven't. And because this is the 5th season and I'm coming up on the 50th episode, I've got some ideas for a couple episodes down the road, like in the summertime, that are just reviews I've just been sitting on forever. And I think you guys will really enjoy them. They're really obscure games that nobody is talking about, but definitely are worth talking about. So I'm gonna hold that question. Dolly Popka, my boy Jay, asks, when can the world see the day when Mike Tendo and Popka make a video, or Pike Tenda, if you will? That'd be really fun. In all honesty, I think that we should do that. So Jay Hicks, call me. No, we'll figure something out. I mean, all the multi-tap guys are great. I actually just jumped on a chat with them not too long ago and was talking with a bunch of them, and they're all really cool guys. I know a lot of them watch the channel, so hi. But it's been really cool to chat with them, and I always like doing collaborations. Kusanagi765 asks, I remember a while back you said you aren't too into the racing genre. What games of them are you into, if any? I'm a big fan of, I like the Extreme G series. Extreme G3 and Extra are 2 of my favorites. Sega Rally, Outrun, quite a big fan of those. But here's the thing about those games, that I can play them, but once I'm done playing them, I get kind of bored with them, because I'm not the type of person who's like, I could do better, like I can race better, like I could get a faster score, I can beat my time. With racing games, I'm never like that. I'm just like, whatever, okay, I won. Like, I drove around and I won. Like, that's pretty much it. I prefer kart racers, because there's actually, I feel like you have a motive, so to speak, and there's a little bit more of a story there, because you've got cool characters and whatnot. He also asks, would you ever consider a collab with a fan for a video? Just curious, I see collabs with almost everyone, but barely see any with fans or subs. Well, That's a great question. So it's funny because a lot of the collaborations I've done are with people who were subscribed and were fans prior to me being like friends with them or anything like that. And then we just kind of came up at the same time, and they either blew past me when it comes to subscribers and content or whatever. And I just kind of hung out and did my own thing. So to me, I've lucked out. I've been able to do a lot of collaborations with people who are just really fantastic and talented and amazing people. So I've been very fortunate to be able to do that. There are some people who currently I'm working on collaborations with that, you know, I'm always interested in collaborations, but I would say that I don't really care about subscriber count, so to speak. It's more content that you have. So if you continuously put out really great content, but you only have like 100 subs or 500 subs, that's fine. As long as your content's there, I think that's the most important thing. So, you know, not really picky over sub count and all that garbage. Just have some concrete ideas and be able to come to me or be approachable. And, you know, if anybody who's watching is ever interested in doing a collaboration, shoot me a message on Facebook or on Twitter or whatever, and have some ideas and be like, you know, hey, you know, we can do something for my channel and you can do something for your channel and we can collaborate or whatever. So currently I am working on a collaboration with someone for both their channel and mine. So you guys will see that. Hopefully that comes to fruition and you'll see it in the near future. We have one more question, and it's from Twitter. All right, we have a question from Dragon Alchemy 09 on Twitter, and he writes, what was the one game that got you hooked for life and your best memories of that game? There's a lot of games that are like that. You know, I'm gonna go with a really weird and obscure one, WWF Attitude. When I was in high school, I had a brief moment where I watched a lot of wrestling and I really enjoyed it. It was like during the Attitude Era. And WWF Attitude was a game that I picked up, and me and my friends would play it, and we had such a great time. We would make characters, and we would you know, make these like special move sets and everything, and we had a lot of fun playing that game. And even to this day, I still have my old memory card with their saves, and I occasionally boot it up with some other friends, and we play them. And you know, like mutual friends of ours will be like, oh, remember when, you know, Joe did this or whatever or that. So that's always one of those games that I have really fond memories of, is WWF Attitude. Even though now if I play it, it's not so good. Back then I remember having so much fun with that game. That is it. I believe those are all the questions that I received. Thank you guys so much for asking a million questions. It was awesome. Looking forward to doing one of these again in the near future. Stay tuned, more Dude You Haven't Played This Game on the way, as well as Pixel Tunes Radio, and also pickups videos and all sorts of really cool stuff. So stay tuned. I've got a lot of really great stuff. And again, thank you so much. I'm very humbled by your subscriptions and your likes, comments, and discussions that we've had. Again, stay tuned to the channel, and peace.